What was there before was almost physically doing damage to their house. Hi, my name is Nick with Cascade Fence and Deck, and today I'm gonna break down a couple of our recent outdoor projects for you. So the customer actually came to us about 2.5 years ago, before we ever touched a board, around March 2023, and we kind of just basically started with a design and then left it. It was a full wraparound deck, taking out the old cedar deck tucked under the house and putting a new composite deck inside there. And the overall look was basically the same layout, just kind of a little bit more space for them. And I would really say this customer was pretty motivated this time around to get off that cedar deck because of the conditions it was in. So basically at some point in that deck's life cycle, they skipped the stain, which led to sort of a domino effect of forgetting more and more to maintain it and stain it and do all the things you really need to do for a cedar deck. Moss really started to take over fast. Once they saw that moss accumulate, they felt it was pointless. They just stopped maintaining altogether, basically. After a couple times where family was coming over for the holidays and whatnot, they started seeing that people were slipping and kind of feeling uncomfortable being on that deck. Every material decision we came to that one pain point, was the fear of having someone they love injured because of their deck. And when you're going from cedar to anywhere else, you want to go up, and up means composite decking. Yes, they're going to get the low maintenance aspect of it, but more importantly, it's low maintenance with the no staining, which means everything stays sealed all the time. The decking isn't going to rot or decompose or be covered with moss, and overall safety is just gonna go up. So they did actually do some research on their end at first, especially between that 2.5 year block. They kind of felt overwhelmed with how many options there were. What we did was narrow down what they were really looking for and what kind of aspects of composite decking they wanted. And it came down with 3 things, which obviously was traction. Number 2 was warranty. They didn't really have to deal with any sort of board replacements, and they wanted something that would have like customer support as the years goes on. And then the last thing was color options. And they wanted to make sure that it felt natural and sort of like what they had before with the cedar. All those options led us down to going the Deckorators Voyage path. It has a 50-year manufacturer's warranty. It has a lot of great options for color, and the traction is like superb. So most people like just to choose one decking color for their entire deck to make it even, to make it look seamless, I guess. But they decided on doing 2. They made it the main deck, the the Mesa color, and they went with Kaya for the racetrack border. So let me see if I can break this down. The back of this house isn't straight, as you can obviously see. The deck has to follow this curve along the house, and every spot where the angle shifts, it needs what we call a zipper board, which is kind of a trim piece that absorbs the angles changed between the 2 runs of decking. Another thing that the zipper board does is it caps off the ends of the boards at each transition. Obviously, that's the most vulnerable part of the decking, is that end piece where it's cut off. Composite decking doesn't really have the same effects that water will give it like cedar does, but if you can protect the deck even more, why not do it? So we did go back to the original 2023 drawings, actually found that the radius was a little slightly off. So we did do some recalculations in 3D renders and found a way to add depth by extending one section of the near stairs instead of stepping the whole deck out, which is what created the odd jog in the first version. So if we move over to the railing, it's also a big component of the safety department. This deck and house were built a while ago, which means in this case it was, it was picket board screwed straight into the bare rim joist with absolutely no bottom rail. Especially with the elevation of this deck, that railing and the leaning portion of it can be even more dangerous than the decking part. So we did go with the Deckorators ALX picket railing, which is aluminum and will last them and look good for a long time. So if we move on to lighting now, because this whole deck and this whole project was a safety-based project, the lights weren't just for decor, they were for that main theme. We added In-Lite wedge lights on the posts and also a 3-foot In-Lite strip light underneath the stairs for 2 points of safety contact for people to see. We also did use the low voltage transformer that was already there, which made it easy for us, but you have to remind yourself that that is gonna avoid the In-Lite terms of service or warranty. It also doesn't allow you to have all the fun features of time scheduling your lights, so they come on at the nighttime, and there's no dimmable portion of it. So if I sum this all up, it was a full wraparound deck rebuild with Deckorators Voyage composite decking in 2 tones, with the Mesa being the main part and the Kaya for the racetrack border, matching composite fascia, Deckorators ALX aluminum railing, and In-Lite lighting on the posts and the stairs. If I were to give you one tip based on this project, I would say if you do have a long period of stint like that, 2.5 years, where you start a project and you don't know basically when you're going to finish that project, mostly in the design phase, tell the company you're working with to archive your plans, because archiving our plans helped us move faster the second time around and get to actually building faster. Okay, so this project was kind of an interesting one because it's in the inner city of Portland. They had sort of already started with their backyard renovations with new landscaping, new concrete, new a lot of things. When we arrived there on site, we realized that half their backyard was covered by their neighbor's fence, which was great. It's always great to have a neighbor's fence. But the other half was not covered by anything, and it was just a retaining wall. So this wasn't really a fence replacement per se. It was just creating their own privacy within their backyard with their own style. What's cool though is the way John found us, kind of the best version of word of mouth, because he had a neighbor that had one of these Hideaway screens. They had used us. And because of that, he was like, I like that, I want that same exact thing. So he came to our office where we have a Hideaway panel on display. So we looked at that panel and said, I want exactly that, let's just start doing it. There wasn't a lot of back and forth when it came to what kind of style he wanted or what kind of fence material he wanted. He knew it was Hideaway and he knew what style it was gonna be. So I guess the main question of this whole project was, why Hideaway and not just a normal cedar fence? Well, in this case, they had an Airbnb/room rented down below, and they wanted their space to feel like a little getaway, a little oasis. And with cedar fences, you get a lot of different styles, but you have to maintain it. And with the Hideaway, you also get a lot of styles because they have a lot of cutout and stencils, but it also is very low maintenance. So this is where it gets technical. When you're dealing with fresh concrete, which we were, you don't really want to mess it up. And because this was even more sort of complex than just a straight line, it was sort of 3 step downs, you didn't want to drill a hole when you weren't supposed to or leave gaps between the panels. So we went through a few versions of those step downs before landing on one that kept basically the standard 3-foot panels at their original length and width and just adjusted the height instead. So from looking at this backyard, we ended up with 12 privacy panels, 3 step downs, and around 51 feet of panel in that sort of river rock pattern with a custom contour transition piece for the gates. I think it looks great because most of the time those Hideaway privacy panels are for privacy walls instead of full fences. But this really gives a unique look to it, which is awesome. So the backyard kind of went from a half borrowed neighbor's fence, half open backyard to now like its own secluded area with good visuals on the borders and something that they themselves and any tenants they have will appreciate because of the oasis that it gives them. So basically, if I were to give you some advice for this, it would be to plan out your transitions beforehand or plan while you're also doing the concrete pouring so that you're building to that concrete instead of around it. Because if you're building around it, it's gonna be a lot harder and a lot longer. So this project was actually pretty cool. It was an Acolyte patio cover, or we like to call it an APC. And the reason why this project even came about was what was there before was almost physically doing damage to their house. If I look here, they had an old pergola sitting there when they bought the house with cheap corrugated panels thrown on top. And the way that it was built was kind of weird because the rafters were angled to cut to dump straight into the gutters of the house, which is usually meant to be away from that. You're supposed to angle it away from the house.
When they got it, they didn't know that this thing leaked.
And you can actually see photos here where the water stain marks are running down the gutter from how much water has been pouring off that thing. So we knew it had to change. They did want that same basic idea of a patio cover that lets light in, that keeps the heat out, keeps it open underneath, but they just wanted something that was gonna work with their house instead of against their house. So when it came to designing this, they actually didn't come straight to the APC. They knew they wanted to replace it, but they also had thoughts of having a wood patio cover, which is more of a traditional look. So we sent them quotes for both and also renderings for both. And through deliberation and discussion, we ended up being on APC side instead of the wood patio cover side. Then if we go to the real nitty gritty of the design, basically it's how many posts you want to do, how you're mounting it into the house, and then what style of panel you want, and then how many panels you want in terms of like length. So in this case, they had really nice stamped concrete patio underneath, and the goal was to mess with it as little as possible. So basically what we did is instead of breaking this whole down and having a huge puzzle, we just used the prior spots where the patio cover was before to put the post star because it still fit, it still worked out. So another easy part of this project was that it was 24 feet wide. I mean, if you know anything about American patio cover, or these patio covers in particular, the panels come in 4-foot lengths or widths. So if you do the simple math, 4 times 6 equals 24, which made this part of the sizing and building process very easy. The next choice is the color of the panels. The most popular color is cool blue heat stop because it's not a traditional white. It kind of gives this cloudier look to it. It definitely also reduces the amount of heat on the patio or the deck, but it also reduces the amount of light because it's a little bit darker, a little bit more opaque. The other option there is the white version, which again does the opposite. It lets a little bit more heat in, it lets a little bit more of the light in. So a little fun fact for you actually is that the polycarbonate that was used in their old patio cover is actually what's used in headlights of cars. Sometimes if that car has been around for years and years and years, you'll see it yellow over time and fog up. But on the back side of your taillights, you're using acrylic for that material. So that won't ever fog up, that won't ever yellow, which is great because you want people to see your stopping lights and stuff like that. If you transfer that over to your patio cover, you kind of want the same thing. You don't want your patio cover to yellow. You don't want it to fog up and look dirty and dusty. You want something that's clean, low maintenance, and will last you forever. Another big design choice was how to mount the whole thing. There's usually 3 options. It's freestanding, fascia mounted, and roof mounted. For them, they wanted more height to their patio cover. Their last patio cover was attached straight to the end of the home. So they just wanted more height and more breathability to their space. So they ended up going roof mounted, but they extended it with skylift brackets. And again, all that does is it extends up the end of the patio cover so that it raises the whole patio cover. So the last decision that was made in terms of design is the color of the framing. The usual color that people pick is black because it's seamless, it's pretty elegant, and it's just standard. But they wanted it to match the trim of their house, which is more of like a brownish natural color. So they ended up going with the bronze look. And even though it's not the same matching as, say, like a wood patio cover would give you, it still gives you a comparable look and it feels even more integrated into your house, which is awesome. So to recap, the overall scope of this was a full width APC, which was 24 by 14, 4 posts, 6 standard panels with a cool blue heat stop, mounted on skylift brackets for the extra height, and then bronze framing to match the trim. So this basically goes from a low, leaking, kind of dangerous patio cover that might damage their house to a breathable, open, modern looking patio cover that will only increase their outdoor living. And we actually went to go take photos afterwards and it looked like they already put their catio out there. So you can already tell they're using their space and using it to more of their advantage because of the security they have with the new patio cover. So based on this project, one tip I would give you is if you're going to plan for an APC, try to plan for an APC that's in the width of a multiple of 4, 4, 8, 16, 24, so on and so forth, because it will leave you in a situation like this where it was perfect and there's no extra work that has to be done versus a situation where you're having to deal with a 19-foot patio cover or a 7-foot patio cover where you have like these really awkward edges that will increase the labor and ultimately increase the price of your patio cover. So this is 3 completely different problems. A deck nobody really trusted to stand out on anymore, a backyard that was half borrowed, and a patio cover that was actively leaking onto the house. What kind of brings all these projects together isn't the materials, it's the approach to the projects. It's finding that one detail that the property has, whether it's the curve of the house, the step down the concretes, or just panel math, and building around it instead of forcing a standard to fix to it. If any of these gave you ideas for your own space, please reach out. And we'd love to talk through it and give you any ideas for the build, especially if you want to build something exactly like it.